Welcome to Wellness with Delaney. I am with Chris Duffin. He is the founder of Bearfoot Shoes of Kabuki Strength. He's a strong man, incredible lifter, and has an amazing story for you. So if you're looking to uplevel your fitness, your health, or your mindset, this episode is just for you. Chris, thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Looking forward to some good discussion on this rainy Friday afternoon here in the Northwest.
It has not been very great. I'm in the Northwest as well, and I've been very, very disappointed in the weather today. So I recently listened to your audiobook and I was so inspired by it. And if anyone's listening and needs a good book, I highly recommend it. It has been just a really good like mindset reminder for me. And I remember like hearing in the foreword of your book that you could have been in jail, you could have been dead the way you grew up. Like you grew up in the weeds, right? And instead you took
Yes.
your life and you broke world records, you started companies, you built amazing empires, and you did it all with a servant heart. And I think that's really, really beautiful. And I'm so excited to get into that. So one thing in your book is you talk about hiking barefooted as a kid, just being like shoeless out in nature. How did that impact your health and your mindset when it comes to foot metrics now?
Yeah. Well, at the time, clearly it didn't have an impact. uh, so from a backstory there, I my parents wanted to kind of live an outside life outside the norm. And that's great for them. May not have been the best to raise a family in, but I literally grew up in the wilderness. So we're talking, strapping beams to trees so you could not have snakes crawl in your sleeping bag at night, dealing with the elements, hunting and foraging for food, and dealing with all sorts of like crazy experiences. But some of the positives of that is just that being close to nature. And I remember just these times of like always being in the wilderness, chasing, chasing lizards and, catching snakes and just going for endless hikes. And at the same time, how tough and resilient my feet were. And later in life, reflecting on that after I'd, been more acclimated to the normal world, we'll say, right?
Mhm.
The world that we're used to living in, and seeing how tender my feet were and how weak they would feel sore from being in my dress shoes because I was a corporate executive, right? And I'm working all day and I'm like, God, this is not the experience I remember as a kid. And then I started transitioning to the strength training. It'd been a pretty big piece of my life from very early phases. That's one of the ways that I found that I was able to build a lot of confidence in myself and just the physical nature of my growing up. It was something that I picked up lifting very early, but I started getting into competitive lifting around 2000. And I started getting, a string of injuries and seeing a lot of injuries in the sport in general with people that have been in it for a long time. Destroyed backs, hip replacements, knees, on and on and on. And there was a point in there where also started doing some clinical continuing education as a result of my injuries. And that sounds a little funny, like just jumping into continuing ed, but I've been a very education driven person my whole life. So at this point, I had 2 degrees in engineering, I had a master's in business. I was like, that's just my nature. Like, it's just to
Mhm.
dive deep. So I'm in this realm and I start doing this clinical continuing ed, and I started going down these rabbit holes around developmental kinesiology. And this is where the prominence of the foot and the foot mechanics started coming back. And I'm like,
Mm.
oh, this makes sense to me. This makes sense to me. I need to get back to using my foot. And at the time, so this is by this point, we're like 2010 ish or so. I start promoting a lot of just being barefoot and lifting without shoes. And at the time, I was getting ridiculed, within the strength training community because I was a fairly well known person at this point in time. Like I was ranked number one in the world for like several years straight at this point in
It's
time.
insane.
And at the same time, people are like, you're crazy. We don't need to do that. And then people that started following what I was doing, they started seeing results. Like I went from like a 750-pound squatter to a 900-pound squatter. I went from a 700-pound deadlifter to a 900+ pound deadlifter. And then I started, putting these same principles in place with other people. And it started, and the shift started happening within the industry over a period of time. And now, like when I started that, like the barefoot movement was really just with the running crowd, right? We'll say you're in the Pacific Northwest. It was
Mhm.
hippies and runners, right?
Yeah.
We're big into that. So it wasn't really outside of that realm at all. Particularly kind of strength training, which is a little anti, granola in essence, right? And I don't say any of that with any negativity. Like that's where I live. Those are my friends, right? Um, but it just painting the picture of the contrast and the feedback and the kickback I would be getting in my realm promoting this type of methodology, right?
Mhm.
And yeah, it was immediate. Like I'd have gym owners, people that have been in the industry for so long, going, I thought this was crazy at first, and then I started doing this, and 6 months later, like just those residual like pains started going away in my hips and my back and my knee, like those aches and stuff, just like started dissipating. It. I'm like, at the time there was not really research backing this. I was just like, hey, this is really simple to me. If you're treating your foot somehow different, like it's some magical thing that's different than every other part of your body, where are we coming up with the science to support that?
Mhm.
Because it, I like my thought process was very simple. Like, take everything that about how the body works and an adaptation that we know in training science and go, what if we just thought about that with the foot? Let's say I take my hurt elbow, it's sore and achy, and I wrap it with an elbow wrap. Nothing wrong with that. Maybe you need to do that as some triage to get through a workout and you do that. But if I woke up every day and I did that all day long, every day, what would happen to my arm?
Mhm.
It'd get weak.
Yeah.
I'd build dysfunction and I'd be at more risk for injury. And guess what? Oh my God, that would also travel to other areas of the body because they would start compensating for this weakness.
Yeah.
It's not a complex thought, right? Like if we have weakness, we're going to have dysfunction. The body's going to try to protect those joints around that. So you're going to get a restriction in movement. And then it gets deeper and deeper and deeper, right? So it's like, okay, if our if we've got a restriction and limitation, and this is getting more into like the depths of neurology. I like using an analogy of cars. I'm a mechanical guy. So even if you're not a mechanical person, you've gotten in a car and you've probably seen like this traction control button on a lot of newer cars. And he's like, a lot of people think if the traction control's on, and let's say it's raining like today, and I'm going around a slippery corner and there's a little tar on there, and the wheels are gonna slipping that are slipping, or the power's transferring to the one that's gripping. And that's
Mm.
actually not what's happening. We've designed the same exact systems. We've got a powertrain, our muscles, like, and that goes through the transmission, all the joints, and then it goes to where the rubber meets the road, right? The tires or our feet. And if we're going around that corner and it senses, just like our nervous system senses, hey, we've got a lack of instability, we've got some weakness here. What is the body going to do? The same thing we've designed the cars. It actually just instantly detunes the engine and detunes the shift patterns to reduce the power output to protect you from crashing and burning a fiery death.
Mhm.
We do our our bodies are designed, well, cars are, that whole system is designed the exact same way. You've got powertrain, you've got the brain, you've got all the nervous system through the car with the sensors, and all of that is how we're doing that. So we start limiting our power output, right?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of stuff that's going on from that to what I'll just keep going. We talk about gait patterns and what happens with the rib cage and pelvis, and how we start getting a breakdown in breathing, how that breaks
Wow.
down into stabilization, and it just keeps going. It's really simple.
Wow. So foot health is really whole body health. And I feel like we've neglected that as a society. Like I don't hear a lot of people talking about that. So okay, you're gonna probably have a heyday with this, but I was a dancer for 15 years. And so I was in point shoes as a kid, like all those things, right? And then I wore a lot of heels. I would dance in heels, all these things. And so my feet are like Bunyan City. Like it's aggressive. And I've had them since I was a child. And so then when I was in going into adulthood, I would try to, well, first of all, as a kid, I always had like Osgood-Slaughters I can never say, but in my knees. So I had all these like growth issues and really painful knees. Growing up, I would get runner's knee. I couldn't activate my glutes. I couldn't activate my psoas. I went through extensive physical therapy with like electrode therapy and everything. And then I started lifting in my socks, like just taking off my shoes while I was lifting. No longer have runner's knees. I can activate my glutes. I can activate my psoas completely fine. And it took me like, I mean, I went to so much physical therapy and nobody ever told me like stop lifting in your running shoes. And I wish someone had told me that. It's crazy to me.
Yeah, because the end of the day, there's not much that you need to do other than actually just allow your foot to move while you're doing some loaded movement, and it'll get stronger. And
Yeah.
yeah, you could take your foot, half a foot off of like a block while you're doing like single leg squats or something like that, and like build it even, build some of this stuff into that. But like those pointy shoes, for example, I mean, if you grab your hand and you with the other hand and you close your fingers together, and you'll start seeing it turn white because we're starting to get lack of blood flow.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of times when I was early in this conversation 15 years ago, people were like, well, where's the science to support this? Where's the science to support this? I'm like, it's really simple. You've got to move it.
Yeah.
You've got to use it or lose it.
It's
Now the
intuitive.
science is actually there. So I'll take the science of plantar fasciitis because I get this all the time. Like, I got to have my arches for my plantar fasciitis. Well, that's the same thing as putting the elbow wrap on. Like, yeah, maybe you need to do that. 10 years ago, I think I was reviewing a meta-analysis of all the research around orthotics. And at that time, there was absolutely nothing showing any long-term viability beyond the 6 to 8 week period of relieving. Now, what's happened since that time is we have found that I think it's 98.5% of cases of plantar fasciitis when you do imaging. So plantar fasciitis is technically an overuse issue. We've overstressed that plantar material and it's inflamed and it needs to rest. Well, imaging, that's both by ultrasound, MRI, and biopsy, all validate that nearly every single case of plantar fasciitis is actually degradation of the tissue. It's lack of blood flow and atrophy, as well as the impact on all the white tissue. It's degrading the tissue of the foot because it's atrophying, and we've got tendinopathy, other issues developing because we're literally cutting off the blood flow, not using it. The tissue's atrophying. So yes, it may be putting that arch support in there relieves it for a short period of time. But the true solution is to actually start strengthening and growing the tissue. It's that simple.
Yeah.
And the way to do that is you just think about how would you deploy a workout, right? You wouldn't just go, and this is an issue. So a lot of people are like, oh yeah, that's why Vibram got sued back in the day because this theory doesn't actually work. People hurt themselves. I'm like, yeah, if you just go, hey, I'm going to walk into the gym and do, 225 for squats for 50 reps every day, just starting out.
Yeah.
You're going to overtrain. You have to adapt just like anything else. You have to add a little load, rest, recover, you keep adding, right? So it's like, hey, I'm not saying throw your shoes away. I'm saying spend a little time out of them.
Mhm.
Maybe 10% more than you do right now. Do that for a few weeks, then add a little more time. If you're training, you know, do some warm-ups in it, then start adding because yeah, you're gonna get sore. Well, that's what happens when you start training. If I do some curls, I'm gonna get sore. Think about it the same way. If I'm getting too sore and not recovering, I'm probably spending too much time. Let's back off. It's that simple. So there's no distinct protocol that works for everyone because it's just like the same thing with a training program. You've got to dial that based on your adaptation, your recovery. What's great too, because I'm talking about, and I did this for the first 6, 8 years, just like going, hey, drop the shoes. That's because there wasn't a lot of minimalist shoes on the
Mhm.
market. And actually, the research does now show that just wearing a minimalist shoe, one that's got a wide toe box that allows the splay of the feet, and you might need some toe spacers to kind of speed that process up, that allows the foot to kind of move and conform, doesn't have an arch support. So you've got to actively control the arch of the foot. Just wearing those does the same for developing the strength and function of the foot and ankle complex as a dedicated foot and ankle strengthening program.
That's amazing, and it's nice because for people who, like, maybe don't wanna be outside barefooted in the city, for obvious reasons, some crazy stuff out there on the streets, like, that's a great option.
Yeah, shoes have a reason. Like
Yeah.
I'm not like we need to protect ourselves from the environment, cuts and abrasions and heat. Like try walking on asphalt or,
Mhm.
disease. Like I'm not going to walk into the bathroom barefoot. Like I, there I'm not anti-shoe. I'm a proponent of using your foot.
I love this. Well, this is so smart too. I mean, you also mentioned that, like, there's a pelvic effect and a spinal effect. Do improper shoes affect posture heavily?
Yes. And it's not that there's like a good posture or bad posture because movement variability is the important thing. Like we
Yeah.
should be moving around, and we get into these like trying to. I've got to correct this to, eh, but there are some interesting things that happen. So the whole running shoe itself is a band-aid upon band-aid. So what
Mhm.
happened with Born to Run in the 1960s when that book came out, and Nike was starting to then grow in the 70s, 80s, so on. But they had a problem. They said, people are injuring themselves. What do we do? And that was because people were walking around with dress shoes before that. And
Mm,
dress
mhm.
shoes has the raised heel. Why? Because of the style. Raised heel and a pointy toe. Well, why did it have that? If we trace that back further, it goes back to the history of we rode horses. And so you had stirrups. And so you had the hook for the stirrups and you had a like, so this then rolled into fashion. And then this rolled into what people were wearing when this transition to starting to be proponents of running again. Well, people would go out and start running and tear their Achilles. Pretty
Mm,
devastating injury. So the question is, how do we resolve that? And so Nike went to an orthopedist, and he said, well, just put a raised heel in there. Well, when you put the raised heel in there, then we had to deal with what's happening with the toes. So they had to raise the toe to account for that. Now, as soon as if you're standing there barefoot and put yourself up on a block, pull that toe up a little bit, pick your big toe up and pull it inwards manually with your hand, and then
mhm.
push on your knee, and you'll find that you've got no control over this knee. Okay. So it's caving inward. So now we have to build in a massive arch support, right? So they're just, all these things are trying to fix the fact that they didn't want to go the route of education, right?
Interesting.
So it's like, okay, we're going to have the raised heel. Well, this drove this, then this drove this, then this drove that. Like they're all trying to fix that. So now what happens with this raised toe, raised heel is you get an overstride.
Mm.
which may be nice for running because it's going to enhance your stride, right? But when you take this overstride, what happens is we've got our I guess there's probably listeners too. I don't know if we're recording, but your pelvis and your diaphragm are directly opposition to each other, right? It's
Mhm.
an equal sign. They're parallel to each other. And when the diaphragm descends, what it does is it causes a co-contraction of the pelvic floor as well as all the thoracolumbar musculature, all the muscle around the abdomen, right? So we create this pressure on these internal organs. We create this great cylinder, and that creates the pressure that stabilizes the spine. Okay, so if we had a skeleton and we hung it, you would see these massive structures around the shoulder complex, the hip complex, and then right there in the center of the body, there's nothing. That's because we're doing it, we're managing it with these modalities. When you overstride, it opens this relationship. So the rib cage is pointing up and the pelvis is pointing down. This is what's called an open scissor relationship.
Mhm. Is this like
And
the rib flare that I'm
yes,
hearing?
so
Okay.
rib flare and like anterior pelvic tilt. I hate using those terms because again, like there's not bad posture per se, but if we spend too much time in this and we default in these patterns, when you're in that, you're not able to create as good a stabilization.
Yeah.
And we also affect what we call the length tension relationship of the muscles. So to stabilize the spine, for example, we've got the erectors on one side working in an X pattern, and then we've got the psoas, as you mentioned, in the front at the hips, grabbing and pulling in the other direction. Well, you're extending and spending a lot of time with that psoas in an elongated relationship, and then the other in a contracted relationship. Not bad to be in those positions. You could train and do that. But if we're there all the time, we're not they're not in the best position to create tension,
Mhm.
and we may start developing a lot of issues. And then we'll also start getting a breakdown in our breathing patterns because again, we're in this position. So yes, uh long and short, it will create issues that lead to back pain, hip pain, knee pain, all that good stuff.
Oh, yeah, and that's basically what happened to me. I had to do so much work to get my psoas working. So, okay, I don't even want to ask this because I know what you're gonna say and it's gonna kill me, but do you think the girls should throw away all their heels?
No, but you should
No?
probably spend some time out of them. Like,
Yeah.
if it makes you feel good to put that on and go on a date with your significant other and stuff like that's great too. But when your foot starts returning to normal shape, you will find that most shoes become highly, highly uncomfortable. And
Yeah,
shoes that you thought were like a good design shoe, you will find like all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, the foot is not. I get this argument. Well, it's just finding the shoe that's the right shape. You don't realize that your foot has been shaped over your life, reshaped
yeah.
in a form that it isn't. And when you start strengthening and using it, it will start changing in shape and will no longer fit most of the shoes out there.
This is so okay, this is blowing my mind because I literally, like, last week I realized I didn't really have any, like, tall heels, and I have, like, a black tie wedding coming up. So I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna order a new pair of heels," and I've been, training more barefooted, training in either, like, working out barefooted or in socks, depending, like, at the gym, I wear, like, Pilates socks so that I'm not sliding on the turf as much.
Yep.
And I got these heels. And I put them on, and I grew up dancing in heels. I grew up in point shoes. I grew up just wearing heels all the time and never had an issue. And within 5 minutes, my feet were cramping. I was like, "Am I just getting old?" I swear it was like I've never experienced that level of pain from wearing heels for just 5 minutes, and I used to wear them all day long with no issue. So this is like, wait, it's all clicking now.
Yeah, yeah, because your foot has now started changing in shape, and yeah, I've gone back and tried to put on some boots I had sitting in the closet that I thought were good, and it's just like, oh my god, I can't even take 2 minutes of this. Like,
It hurts.
it's just excruciating.
Oh my gosh. Okay, well, that makes sense. I was like, maybe it's just coming with age. I'm in my upper 20s now. Maybe my butt. No, I guess that's a good thing. It means my feet are restructuring. Okay, so correct me. You can correct me if I like mess this up, but you broke the world record for the first. You were the first man to both squat and deadlift 1,000 pounds each, right?
Yes. So I was also the first person to do it sumo style.
Wow,
I hold. I think I might still. Oh, there's a Guinness World Record right there for that one.
amazing.
Um, and I did that for 3 repetitions, which made me the first person to. Which there's no actual record for that, but go find it. Nobody's done it or did it at the time.
Amazing.
Did reps with 1,000 pounds, and I was also by far the lightest person. So at the time, there was I think 5 people that had deadlifted 1,000 pounds, and most of those they were all between 360 and 440 pounds, and I was 260
Yeah.
pounds.
Wow.
And then I came back and did 1,000 pound squat for repetition. There was maybe 6 people in the world that have done 1,000 pound squat, but none have done 1,000 pound deadlift as well. Because typically, what you've got is people that have a frame. Obviously, you've done a lot of work. You're strong. You're one of the strongest people that's ever walked the planet. No discrediting, but my build's pretty average as far as like height, wingspan, all this. So I wasn't a specialist at either. And so what I was trying to do is demonstrate the ability to control and manage spinal mechanics, what I teach. That so
Yeah.
walking the walk. I'm a big believer in we could talk science all day, but you have to learn and practice and demonstrate. The true path to learning is not
Hmm.
just in a textbook. It is lived experience.
I love that. So, okay, when you broke these records, were you wearing shoes?
No,
So you squatted and deadlifted 1,000 pounds barefooted.
correct.
That's insane. You know that's absolutely like that's beast mode. That's pretty freaking crazy.
It's a performance enhancement, actually.
Yeah.
So a lot of people thought at times like, "Oh my god, Andy did it barefoot. Oh my god." And I'm like, actually, that was one of like the ways I was able to do that.
Yeah. That's amazing. That's really, really cool. So for people who do want to like up level, because like you mentioned, I mean, with the lifting crowd, it can be very anti-granola, which is so funny because I think the ancestral lifestyle in general is going to be so good for your lifting and for your
Yep.
strength training and bodybuilding. I mean, it's what people are eating when they're lifting and what they're doing, what they're wearing, all this stuff is so not geared towards a healthy life for a lot of people. So when people are like trying to hit crazy PRs or body build, like should they start doing it barefooted? Do you think they'll see crazy gains pretty fast once they strengthen their feet?
I Yes, once you strengthen your foot. I'm also though, unless you've got like your own gym, like there's a certain level of making other people uncomfortable around you not
Mhm.
wearing shoes in those spaces. And so I think we've got to have some context around it. And that's where after a lot of this teaching, a lot of people kept asking me, well, what to wear, because I can't be shoeless in my gym. And the output of that was barefoot shoes. That's
Mhm.
BEAR, as in imagine some kid growing up in the wilderness dealing with bears like myself. Like, so it's a bit of play on that. But the barefoot shoe is distinctly different than all the other minimalist shoes out there. So it's not a vegan synthetic. It's an all natural, like leather, suede, canvas shoe with aesthetics that are fit for, that more masculine kind of crowd or unisex. We actually have a lot of female customers as well, just with where the style changes have been going. Um, and so we have a very unique shoe, which has the widest toe box in the industry. It doesn't have the wrap on the sole, so it's got the greatest torsional movement of the foot, which is actually really important because if we think about the frequencies of the arches, so you've got 3 arches of the foot, and they operate at different frequencies, and that really creates this rotation. So if you think about driving that big toe down and shortening that big long arch of the foot, like it actually is a twisting movement. So being able to move within that plane. So that's what I like people to do if they've got a barefoot shoe, is grab that shoe and actually twist it, not just roll it up. and see how much movement and flexibility. And we also have the lowest durometer sole, so it's got the greatest shear gripping force in the industry. So one, just fabulous style. We also have got boots, like real, like working boots, outdoor boots, just this full line of, yeah, products that are the anti-granola in nature. So just to fit, because again, it's not a negativity towards any direction, except, I like not wearing birth control on my foot. So, there's that too. But okay, that's a jab. But
I love it. No, you're so
but
correct there. I'm totally tracking.
so I make it in jest, but everybody knows what I mean. So, but it's every shoe company in that is marketing to the same exact audience, and they're not serving, like a blue collar, a hunter, this crowd. And so I think that's important, that we try to help everyone be able to live better through having proper foot health and strength.
Yeah, and I'd be really curious to see. So I know I have a lot of girls asking me because I mean I have men and women in my audience, obviously more women just because I
Yep.
I am one and I'm such a girl's girl. And one thing that I've been very honest about
I wish I
is,
had the white one.
oh, those are cool.
This is excuse my little quick easy put on one, but this is one of our little dirty because I was just wearing it. We've got a few different colors, but this is a nice unisex shoe that works really well.
Amazing. You'll have to forgive my dog. I'm gonna be trying to cut out her little barks. We're recording right in everyone coming home from work time, and she is my guard dog, and she has decided to choose violence today. So the audience is used to Kemper. She's all over my page. But I will say for the girls, I'd be really curious to see. So for me, one thing I share a lot about that I'm honest about is like I used to be obviously so quad dominant and I couldn't engage my glutes, which aesthetically I didn't like, but it led to a lot of injuries, right? Like I was
Yep.
saying earlier, psoas and glutes couldn't engage them. So I had a lot of knee issues, squatting and running, etc. And in the past few years, I always say I'm like recovering quad dominant. Like I've been able to kind of reverse that by lifting barefooted and doing that. And just really, doing a lot of more like band work and just teaching my body, teaching my
Yep.
body
Yeah.
how to engage. And a lot of it I feel like is like neuromuscular, right? But I'd be
Hmm.
so curious. I have a lot of girls who come to me like, okay, how do I grow my glutes? How do I get bigger glutes? And I look at them lifting and they're still lifting in the like gym shoes, right? In the running
Yep.
shoes. I'd be so curious if putting on some of your barefoot shoes could help the girls who really can't engage their glutes finally
It
get those juicy glute gains that they want.
absolutely does. Absolutely does.
Amazing. Well, that's the ad right there for the girls.
And we think about neuromuscular too. So we go back to the car analogy. Like if you're on an unstable environment, we're going to start having our inability to maximally recruit and engage musculature. Like that big toe, being able to drive that down is key to engaging this balance of adductor quad glute relationship.
Yeah, I love this so much. And then, okay, I feel like this is a perfect segue into kabuki strength. I would love to hear. So, one thing that I heard in your book was people talking about, I think it was in the forward, talking about how this is so much better than regular gym equipment and has been really helpful for like building functional strength. Can you tell me a little bit about what kabuki strength is and why it's different from like your regular run of the mill gym tools?
Yeah, yeah. So I'm incredibly proud of the products that I've created there. I've got awards for scientific innovation and all sorts of stuff. Penetrated sports performance faster than any other company I'm aware of in history. So I worked with every single major league baseball team, about 80% of the NFL, more than that of the NBA, thousand colleges, military. My stuff's even in the White House.
Wow.
But I say worked with in that level because the company was acquired last year. So I have stepped away from that. I am working on some new designs and product innovations at this point in time. But what I developed there was same thing. It's like how the load sits in space in relation to a joint and what that does from a input to the brain and then thus drives the change in the system. It sounds like goofy, but if you put the products in your hands and use them, that's why they were everywhere in sports performance. I mean, if you watch any high level performance athlete, more than likely using products that I created at their home or with their trainer, because of the enhancement that it delivered in being able to train better and reduce load. And so really proud of that. But yeah, it's that, I'm not involved with Kabuki at this point in time. Uh, built that over 10 years and then stepped away last year.
Oh, congratulations on the
Thank you.
acquisition. Yeah, I feel like a theme with you that I've read in your book and just from talking to you, it's like you have this brain that's like, okay, this system has flaws and I can make it better. How do I like hack it to make it so much better? Where does that come from with you?
Um, I think that that's probably my growing up. I mean, no matter where I was at, it was work against the environment to try
Yeah.
to figure out, all right, I've got, the rain's coming and it's coming under my tent and you know, we've got, I mean, it was constant different environment where you're having to figure out and create. And so
Yeah.
the creation side of that, and then the entertainment, like there was nothing but, every couple of weeks going to the library, getting a big stack of books to read by candlelight or flashlight. So it was research, and it was just always having to innovate. And that's something that's stuck with me my entire life. It's always working on something to try to improve or get better. I can't look at something. It's like my wife is frustrated because it at times because I get absolutely compelled. I cannot not get involved and make it better.
Yeah.
So, like, if we talk about like the training aspect, a lot of like what I was talking about is like the load in space and how to manage that to be able to control those training inputs.
Mhm.
Now, we could do that by better educating people on how to move and how to manage load. And so I ended up so I had a coaching segment of that business, and we coached people around the globe and built an incredible database and ways to actually see into what a person's responding. So to be able to know your actual physiological preparedness on any given day.
Mhm.
So just by monitoring like how fast the bar is moving to norm, we know that you didn't have enough sleep last night. You were up, dealing with a sick child or had some, a spat with the spouse, or it doesn't really matter, but that is the reality of where you're at today. So you're not a 180-pound squatter. You're 183, 195, 156. And we can know exactly what that is on every single day and tailor that load.
Wow.
And so we did that. I started that, maybe 2008-ish, with measuring the velocity of the bar. And so at the time, that was only used to manage how fast you train, this velocity-based training. And I was using that to try to determine what that person's what's happening on their neurology, like where's their recovery. And so we built that out. And then this last 2 years have spent taking this 10 years worth of work. And actually it's more like 15 years worth of work, but with some really innovative tech in your phone, because the pixels are now accurate enough with like the newer iPhones. We don't have Android yet because you can't guarantee the camera pixel rate, which I don't want to sell a product that doesn't work.
Mhm.
Um, but it identifies on the plate on the bar and also the joints on your body. And we've got an entirely adaptive workout. You literally just
Wow.
set your phone up and it'll give you feedback on your technique, as well as tell you, hey, it looks like you've got another 5 pounds that you can put in there. And then
That's
it'll
so
modify
cool.
your workouts going forward. So it's as if there's a high level coach in the room with you making those adaptations in the workout as well as your workout plan, because we can see the strengths and the weaknesses that are developing. So it's a really amazing app,
Yeah.
LiftLab app. If you want to check it out, you can. There's a link to it on my site, chrisduffin.com, and it's just a game changer. So you start using that, and if you've got some pain, some nagging issues that are like, you'll find that we're now managing that, so you don't have to go build your own gym and buy, $5,000 worth of my Kabuki product. And then how do we manage this and make it in a fashion that is more consumable? Like for
Yeah.
$30 a month, you can have, a trainer that would cost you 300 or 500 a month watching you and creating a one-of-one workout plan, individualized to your level of adaptation. So it's going to learn exactly how you're adapting, where you're at on any given day, and be able to modify that training just for you. It's
That's
really,
so
really
cool.
fascinating. There's nothing like it in the industry. I mean, the
Yeah.
depth that has gone into it is absolutely insane.
That is amazing. Yeah, I'll make sure to link your website in the notes. And I feel like this is so the future of fitness, right? Like people are paying so much for trainers. I know people who pay $200 a session. And what they could get, like, and I feel like even then, humans are flawed. We might miss something. We might not really be able to know how to calculate what somebody can really, like, the load they can put on, or those little micro tweaks, right? But to
Yep.
have something that can really just like help you hone in your workout, know exactly what to do, exactly how hard to push. And I feel like that's something for me. Sometimes I'm like, especially because I try to cycle sync a lot, but I'll be like, I can't tell if I like can go heavier or if I need to not. And I think just
Yeah.
to have something like, now you can push, now pull back. That's amazing.
Well, let's get into the science of that for just a second.
Yeah.
So you mentioned something really, really great there. Like even a human can't see some things. So let's take what's happening at a chemical level in your body when you start before you have an injury.
Mhm.
So you might get an injury, but it started propagating weeks before that. And it started
Mhm.
propagating when a muscle started fatiguing early. And as it started to fatigue, we get this hypoxic condition start building, and these chemicals that are releasing that then start restricting how the nerve moves and the muscle moves with each other and creates some forces. Anyway, this ends up then leading to where we have an injury. Now, the earliest possible time that we could know this is actually when we start seeing that breakdown in muscle.
Wow.
And if we are measuring, let's say, how that bar is moving, for example, okay, and we know the change in rate of acceleration, not the rate of acceleration. So this is taking what I was doing with velocity to another level. The technical physics term for that is called the jerk metric. It's a rate of change of acceleration. That and essentially what is happening is it's called that because the movement gets micro jerky. You can't see it. Well, guess what? We can see that. And we can see that and prevent the injury at the earliest possible intervention by going, we're going to deload or move on to something else to eliminate that. And so I use our app myself. I've done this for ages, and it's still it's it's that good. It's absolutely fascinating what you can accomplish with that level of detail and understanding what's happening at all these levels, and then creating the algorithms to be able to manage that. And I'm not discounting personal training. I coach people on a personal level as well. Mostly it's a lot of like health restoration through supplementation, peptides, just this like, taking somebody's health markers and where they want to be in life. Usually working with a lot of like high level executives as well, maximizing brain performance, cognition, but doing this, the training component when it makes sense. But again, that's from a cost perspective or timing perspective. Like I need a coach here at this time. Like I'm getting home from work. I like there's a there's a level of that just doesn't work all the time and doesn't work for everybody that has the time, the convenience, somebody the right person, like all these factors have to align. And so
Mhm.
that's where trying to create something that fills those gaps and helps everyone live this better quality of life. Because at the end of the day, like we have to have resilience. We have to develop resilience. Mind, body, and spirit is the essence of life.
Mhm.
It is the essence of life. And that's not ethereal. Like if we don't have something that we're pushing against, the process of atrophy, what's happening in your foot from wearing those starts happening. If I break my arm and put a cast on, there's some adaption that goes on in the bone. Um, we could talk about the science of that, but we'll skip that. But the muscle starts atrophying immediately. Like
Wow.
this is life. If there's no wind pushing against a tree, like its roots don't go deep and strong, and it's going to end up growing and falling over. The elements hitting the bark, telling it to create like it kills itself if
Mhm.
it doesn't have something, the environment to work against.
Yeah, and I feel like this applies to your physical fitness, to your mental health, to your just like your potential in life in so many ways. And I kind of want to dig into that because I feel like you have a really interesting mindset and I really like a lot of what you have to say. So for somebody, let's say somebody does feel like they're stagnant or they're just atrophying, like whether it's in their purpose, their creativity, whatever, like how do you how do you recommend people light that fire or create that pressure again?
Yeah. I I think about it in this process I call the 6 Ps, and you can visualize a square root symbol, right? You've got a little plateau, and then you got this big drop off in a pit, and then it spikes up to a higher
Mhm.
point, and it levels off again. And I say level off again because I don't want to send the message of burning the candle on all ends at all time. Like that is
Mhm.
a recipe for disaster. But any sort of growth, you know, personal growth, growth in a business, all these steps, growth as a leader, being able to lead people, it comes from being able to see this, spot up there, that high point. I call it the precipice. There's this pit in front of you. It's the unknown. It's scary. And you need to take a step and off the edge. And you're going to plunge and you're going to have a free fall. But recognizing those moments when you need to take that. And it starts with micro moments. S- Imagine somebody says, I want to start this business. I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to do this. But first, I need to quit my job. I don't know if it's the right fit. I can't even, I don't know. I can't approach the conversation with my boss. Well, you can't do that. You can't start a freaking business.
That's true.
Right.
You'll have a lot harder
Yeah.
conversations than that.
Right. Yeah. So like start recognizing the right moments, the things in your life that are creating this twisting sensation in your gut.
Mhm.
So you can reflect on big moments because we have biological drivers that drive us early in life to do a lot of this. So it's taking that step away from living at home. It's scary. It's exciting. Right? Seeing that hot number over at the other table that you want to go talk to. It's scary. It's exciting. The choice to have kids. It's scary. It's exciting. At some point, these biological drivers stop happening, and then you just get scary and uncomfortable.
Mm,
And then that's when people start plateauing. Think about it. That's when it's like all of a sudden somebody hasn't moved anywhere for 20 or 30 years
yeah.
because we have to learn to take those steps, and you have to learn the micro ones because you're going to take a step. It's going to be the unknown. We'll talk about the plunge in a minute, but you're going to end up in this pit. It's going to suck. But as you're climbing out of that, the more strengths that you've developed, the better off that you're going to be, the higher you're going to be able to climb. Right. And so that's the pull. So we've got the precipice, recognizing. That's the important thing about the precipice is recognizing those moments and those micro moments. Those micro moments are like things that I need. You don't just chase every freaking challenge that comes your way, but chasing the ones that are important that are going to challenge you in the skills that you need to develop. And that's again, this like, what is that component that's God, I don't want to have that conversation, with my boss or my partner or who. Being on the other side of that's going to be good, though. It tells
Mm.
you, I need to step into that right now. And then getting okay with the fact I don't know how it's going to turn out. That's the plunge, like being in the free fall. In the plunge, the other side of that is that in the bigger ones, you might spend a little bit more time going, "Oh my God, what did I do? I'm going back to
Yeah.
school. I'm starting my own business. I, I'm changing careers." It's not always in entrepreneurs for everybody, right? Recognizing that you need to take a look inward at those. Take a look inward at the things that are bothering you, that are scaring you, that are depressing you, that are creating shame, that are creating uncertainty. Meditate into those, because this is your opportunity at this time to better understand your own values and drivers. And that's going to help direct this whole process in the future. The better you understand yourself and what the way in which you want to live. So we could think about this values. Another word for values is your intentions, right?
Mm.
It is how you want to impact the world. It is your creative canvas of living life. It's a beautiful thing to be able to create change in this world that aligns with how you want to live and how you want to express yourself, right?
Mhm.
So the plunge is that. And then you've got the pit. The pit just sucks. That's when you're in it. Like, ah, man. And you just got to get the shorter the time you can spend in the pit, the better. And
Yeah.
the first step there is just recognizing it. And I spent a lot of time in that. We didn't talk about my early life too much, and that's fine. Anybody wants to read my book, it's not a woe is me. It's like a teaching lessons. It's for you.
Oh, you need to
Um,
read it. I'll put it in the show notes. It's so inspiring.
so the pit, I like this process called the ACL. It's acknowledge, step one, and that's really powerful. Just acknowledging, like, oh, life isn't like this. This period of time is like this. I'm in one of those. I'm in one of those. God, if I read any book, like a business book, or I step into, I use business a lot because it's a lot of the folks I work with, right? You step into an organization, they tell you about the glory days. Well, if you roll back to the glory days in the books, in those organizations, whatever, it sucks. And they couldn't wait till they were out of it. It would be the best thing ever to be on the other side of it. But it actually is the thing that they're celebrating.
Hmm.
It's the action book piece of life. It's the stories that they tell over and over and over again. We're talking shoes. Read Phil Knight's book, Shoe Dog. And they tell, and everybody talks about these moments back in the business when it was horrible. And you should have been there. You should have been there. It was the amazing time. So that step two is like celebrating, like, oh, this is a period of time. I'm going to be so proud of myself when I get to the other side of this, when I can tell the story and reflect and be in those moments, like celebrate and now leverage that, going, I care about this. It's going to deliver my best, and leverage that to do so. And that's how you shorten that period of time and get to that point where you're now you're building upon all those strengths and building towards this precipice, that vision, that goal, that personal, whether it's something, you're leading a team to or a corporate, it doesn't matter. You get to that point, and then you spend some time with some self-care, and again, some reflection. That's the plateau, and you spend a little time. Just don't spend too much, right? You go on vacation for a week and you come back and you're refreshed and you're ready to crush it. Well, you go to Bali and you spend 9 months on the beach drinking Mai Tais. You come back and you're soft. You're
Mm.
weak. You spent too long, right? Doesn't matter that you did something amazing 20 years ago. You might not have the mindset, and you might freeze up and you might lock up when the time comes.
Ooh. Is it like the saying? It's like the hard times create strong men
Yes.
create good times create weak men, and
Yep.
weak men create hard times.
So you've got to make these choices, because at the end of the day, guess what? It's going to come at you in life. I hate to tell you, if it hasn't yet,
Mhm.
it's going to come at you. And
Yeah.
you can see people that haven't had the struggle and challenge, and all of a sudden something happens, a death of a family, a loss of business, or whatever it is. And all of a sudden they can't manage, and they just lock up because they've been on this slow, gradual atrophy train. And then the precipice hits and it's now a plunge off of a descent, because that's what's going to happen if you don't do this. So it's a balance. It's just like, oh, guess what? I just mapped the process for training, didn't I? Oh, it's the same physiological adaptation response. Oh my God. The six
Yeah.
P's is the exact same thing as going to the gym on a regular basis, but making sure that you recover and you balance that in there.
Mhm.
Ah, yeah, it's life.
Wow.
That is
Yeah,
the
it's
essence of life. So that's what my six P's framework is. It took me like 25 years to come up with that, but
no, I love it. I love what you said. I mean, and I feel like I'm in kind of a season of probably I would say the climb. Like it's really interesting. This past year in a lot of ways has like cracked me open. Just in building my business, in taking on new roles and saying yes to things and personal stuff and like sad things, right? It's just all happened. And it's been so interesting. I think that's probably why I connected to your book so much too. With like learning you've been through so much struggle, you've built so much, and you kept being like, I see this, I'm gonna make it better. And you built it. And anytime you saw an issue, instead of being like someone else will do this, you created the solution, right? And I found that really inspirational. And so I think I'm just like, I just want to learn from you. Like that's so how you get there without crashing and burning. So I mean, really that plateau is like in fitness and in life and career and personal development. Like, is it really important to just take a time to plateau for just a little bit so that
yep.
you don't burn out or else like you crash later on?
Yeah, you can't just keep like over and over, like, because you'll create that downward trend as well. Just like
Yeah.
if I did daily doubles, CrossFit style 7 days a week, like it's not going to end up well, right?
Yeah.
I- So you've got to take that time. It's that balance of those things, but you absolutely, our nature is the other end. Our nature is to seek comfort and
Hmm.
to make it easy. And that is what's going wrong, right? If I
Mm,
don't use my foot, if I don't use my body, like it's over and over the exact same things. And that's why I find the thought process to arrive at these things is pretty simple when you take a step back and look at it in that fashion.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's a really great philosophy. And then kind of along this line, what would your 2 cents be on like the victim mentality? Like what would you say to somebody who's struggling, whether it's in their fitness or in any other goals, like fitness, personal goals, but their inability to step off the ledge is a victim mentality and that like feeling that they can't do it for whatever reason?
Yeah. Well, you can take a moment and go, I am wronged. And you can spend the time there, but there is absolutely no value that that's going to provide you. The only opportunity for growth is to actually take ownership, even if it is something else or there's some way that you probably could have played a role in that,
Mm,
right? And making that distinct decision to go, this happened because of me in some fashion, and taking accountability gives you the ability to look at it in a framework that can allow you to actually grow and get stronger from this. If you don't, you have no opportunity to do so.
mm,
So I said Kabuki was acquired last year. Not getting into the depths of that here, but that was a hostile acquisition. And it'd be really easy for me to blame losing that on, you know, billionaires with teams of lawyers that were investors and did all, but like for me, I owned that. And I said there was a piece there that was my failure. And that allowed me to be able to look at that in a fashion of how would I approach things differently? If I didn't, I would not learn from that and what I can do differently moving forward.
it's like hyper self-awareness. And I think society is
It's an active choice. It's an
yeah,
active choice,
yeah.
and it's hard to do. Like,
Mhm.
it's so easy, like, you get in an argument and blame like, what the only thing that you have control of in this world is yourself. So the only way that you can drive change is to accept that so that you can learn from it, so you can change yourself, because you can't change being a victim.
Mhm.
You can't change what's happened to you.
Yeah. But if you don't change, it'll just repeat. Like everything, you don't change, you just repeat patterns, and then
Yep.
you end up back where you started. Well, I mean, it's cool to see, and obviously it's hard when you go through the hard seasons and like the acquisition, whatever, happened, but it's cool to see like you took that and you're already building something else that's incredible and always building upon and building upon. I think that's a great lesson. Like you don't need to stay stuck in the slums. You keep moving forward.
There's another tool I like to push people on when they've had that happen to, or the potential of it happening. Because here's one of the problems: when you get locked up with fear, it shuts down your creativity and your potential. You get these self-limiting things where you're just so focused on what's going to happen when this bad thing happens. So sometimes it can be incredibly freeing to have those things happen. The day after I was let go from my own company, I was in amazing spirits because it opened the just so much potential for me. And the practice around that is just, if you find yourself in one of those where you're just caught up and you're just worrying about this potential outcome, it is to meditate into that happening. Like, imagine this has happened. I just lost my job. I just lost my business. My partner like, whatever it is, live in that, visualize it, and now go, what would I do? I've got nothing.
Mm,
Everything in my life has just been taken away from me. Same time, he can't take you, like you, what you know, the strengths of what you built going through all those, the 6P cycles over and over again. That can't be taken from you. So what would you do if everything was stripped away and you were starting from ground zero right now? And
yeah.
spend some time. You spend some days, like, just what would that be? What would that map? Now draw your self back to the moment and go, oh, I actually have, oh my, I got a house, I got this, like, and now I've got that to start with is ground zero from all this to build this. And that can help open your mind to the possibilities that are out there that you don't see.
Mhm. And I think it's a good practice too, because like when you're in fight or flight and something horrible happens, right? It's like a muscle memory. If you've already like talked yourself through, it's kind of like, if you have a gun, right? Like I'm not gonna shoot my gun for the first time when someone breaks into my home. Right? I need to go practice it and learn it so that
Yeah.
in that moment when my adrenaline's high and I'm stressed and scared and fear takes over, like, I already know what to do. It's already settled in my body. It's in my muscle memory. I feel like it's kind of that same
Yes.
thing. Like, when something bad happens, if you have a plan in place and it's solid, you don't have to, like, try to figure it out while you're in fight or flight and would probably make a poor decision, which,
Yep.
okay, you're probably the only person that probably won't think that this is super morbid then. But I've told my husband, I've a million times in my life have visualized him dying and, like, what I would do, what my plan would be. If we had kids and he died, like, what I would do. And sometimes I'll be, like, crying. I'm like, "I'm thinking about you dying." He's like, why are you thinking about it, Delaney?" But I'm like, for the longest time we got married when I was so young, I really thought that I couldn't survive without him. Like, if he was gone, what would I do financially? What would I do in day to day? How would I take care of myself? And so for me, part of it's an exercise in figuring that out while I'm not in fight or flight. That way,
Yeah.
when that happens, it's not like, "Holy crap, everything just fell apart."
And it's not just preparation for that moment. What it's doing is helping you understand the full potential and the things that are of interest that you want to do and chase. So
Mhm.
you can open you can maybe find a path that doesn't exist there, which is why I was so excited when everything happened. I was like, this is the best thing that could happen to me, because I got to a point where I was so locked down with what I had to do, because I had
Yeah.
like all these big investors in my company that were like, you can't do this, you can't talk about this, you can't, that meme on social media is inappropriate, like you can't, like,
Like, dang it.
and 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 I was like, man, there's like, I was talking about the peptides and I've got this whole regenerative amplification method. Well, I couldn't talk about that when I had a company creating these other things, going, hey, well, that conversation is going to take away from this. I'm like, yeah, but we need to change the standard of care
Mhm.
as it relates to healing and regeneration. This is ridiculous what's happening when we can actually heal tissue and make these changes in people's metabolic markers. And like, I, I, I want to like, so anyway, yes, it opens the avenues for the creativity and better, again, understanding where you want to go in life, what your potential is.
Yeah, and I think that this really does apply to so many avenues in life, what we're talking about, and at the end of the day, like, you can optimize your health, you can optimize your foot health, and then your whole body, your lifting, your personal health, and I think this all really does just tie in beautifully together, and there's, like, this tone of, like, hyper self-awareness, hyper creativity, and like, not staying down, like, choosing your own path and committing to it, and that's what I love. I mean, I think more people need to really, like, dig deep and find that dog in them, to really just start accomplishing their goals, and I think that's something that you demonstrate so beautifully. Okay, so then you obviously being, like, one of the craziest lifters in the world, multi-entrepreneur, doing so many things, right? So what is your wellness goal then?
My wellness goal these days is to have training be additive to my life. Like when you're pushing extremes, it's not healthy. And
Yeah,
so I'm looking to just have the best quality of life that leaves me energized, refreshed, and there and present for my family and the things that I want to do. So it's yeah, that's it. I guess you could think of it as longevity, anti-aging, something of that nature.
yeah.
But I I don't feel any older than I did 20 years ago, honestly. I feel amazing. I'm living like uh, that's the way I want to be. And yeah.
I love that. No, I love that so much. There's not a timestamp on health, and nowadays, I think people can act like that, and they glorify your 20s and your young 20s, and, the healthiest people I know are not in their 20s. I'll just say that. Like,
Yeah.
you learn a lot of lessons. I think the 20s are a season of refinement for sure, but
Yeah.
the healthiest people I know are not in their 20s, and I think that's really important for people in my generation to understand, like, there's not a timestamp on feeling amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm almost 50 and yeah, certainly don't feel it at all. So that's
Amazing.
yeah.
Hey, well, that's the new standard of 50. 50 is the new 30, and that's great. And I think that's important. Like, people, if you are, like, in the shape that you're in, that means anyone, if they are committed enough, they can ultimately find their best health, whatever that looks like for them. And I think that's
Yeah.
super, super important. Well, where can people find you?
So my handle on social media is typically Mad Scientist Duffin with some underscores between those. Pretty easy to find though if you just type in Chris Duffin. It's like muffin, but with a D. All right.
Love
So
it.
DUFFIN, chrisduffin.com. Those links there if you want to explore coaching, stuff like that. It's enhancedexecutive.com, but you can all that's just linked on chrisduffin.com. So pretty easy. Mad Scientist Duffin on social media, Chris Duffin, the website. Bearfoot
Amazing.
Shoes, BEAR foot shoes, build fast formula. All my projects are linked on Chris Duffin though. So you can find my supplement line, my shoe line, LiftLab app, the best there is in auto regulation, AI based training out there.
Yeah, I'm dying to try it. It sounds absolutely insane. And then that paired with the barefoot shoes, you are going to be in the best shape of your life. Girls, remember, if you want to get those glute gains, you need to stop lifting in your running shoes and try out barefoot shoes because it'll seriously change the game for you. Chris, thank you so much for joining me for the past hour and change. I feel like there are so many more avenues and things that I could like chat with you about for years. And even in this hour, I've learned so much. I'd love to have you on anytime again if you're ever down to come back on and chat more about your childhood and more avenues in what you're doing. You guys, if you love this episode, make sure to leave us a 5-star rating and make sure to share this episode on your story and tag Chris to just get this word out there. And if you're looking for an inspirational audiobook, I definitely recommend The Eagle and the Dragon. It's his autobiography and it is absolutely mind blowing. Thank you all for listening, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.